A while back I uploaded a video on how to refurbish a speedometer of a 3039 Model A, and people have been asking, well, what about us 2829ers? Well, today I've got a 2829 Speedo on the table. The decals on here are mostly fine with the exception of the red wheel. I'll see if I can take care of that. Most importantly though, it doesn't work at all. When I spin this shaft here, then I can feel that, there's gears skipping in there, something like that. Can you hear that? Yeah, it's not good. So, let's get right to it. Les Andrews let me down on this one. All you can find in the Model A Mechanics Handbook is how to remove the bezel, how to remove the cover plate, and then how to loosen this screw here in order to get the Speedo out of its housing. Which is a damn disappointment, but I was able to find something online which covers the entire removal of the thing in great detail. I've printed it out for me, and I'm going to take this thing apart as I require it, because, some things may be fine, others may be not, so I'm trying to keep my personal effort down as much as possible, and, if there is stuff that risks breaking the casting, which can be avoided, then I'm not going to do it. So, yeah, that's the plan anyways. Hang on, this was loose, so maybe if I tighten this, the gears are going to engage again. Look, it works! I have, sort of fixed it. Okay, good, so no gears are busted. That's great. From one year to another, they switch from this honk of tons of different pieces, very, very complicated, to the other style which you saw me taking apart, which basically has two moving parts. Taking this thing further apart will mean pulling these shafts here. Now, I don't see any reason why I should pull this or that shaft, because they are very easy to spin. However, the shaft which goes from here to here and links to the main shaft is fully enclosed in here, and it seems to have a little bit of stiffness to it. I can feel it when rotating this wheel. So this thing here is staked over by a pro, obviously. I'm going to try and dress that down a little, because the instructions tell that it might break the casting if you just brute force them out. This one here is clearly staked, you can see. This one would have to be drilled out if you were to pull this shaft. Otherwise, things like this could probably happen. So yeah, looks like somebody has been in here before me. I'm also going to drill this guy here out, because it will give me access to the main shaft, so I can soak it down. I'm not going to pull it, because there's really no play to worry about in here, and why take things apart that work perfectly fine. I forgot to press record. What I've just done is drill out the plug in here. It has been staked over as well, so I've used a 3.3mm drill to remove the staking, and then a 2.5mm drill to hook into this plug here and to get it out. And that grants access to this wick, and now we can look straight up to the shaft down in here. Now I'm going to drill out these stakings right here and tap them for set screws, because this nut here will have to be jammed in a certain position where it has the ideal play with the bevel gears. Obviously that didn't work, we saw it fail earlier on. While I've got it here in the vise, mazel. You know what's a good idea? Drilling the hole with the opening facing down, so the swarf will fall out instead of onto the bevel gear. I'm tapping this M3, which means no more freedoms for this guy here. You can hear it squeal. Ah, I want to be imperial. No, not metric. Well, that took no effort at all. Which is good news. Right, I think this is as far as I'm going to take this guy apart. Here is the bushing, here's the shaft I took out with all the nice hardened caked on grease. And now I'm going to take some acetone, paint thinner, you know, anything will work really. Being careful not to hit the decals obviously. And, you know, generously clean everything in here out. Make sure everything spins nice and freely, going into the openings here and there. And after that, well, carefully re-grease it and re-oil it, and so on and so forth. Okay, the mechanism is cleaned out to a point where I can actually see that there is a gear down in there. And to a point where all the grit that was on here is now inside here. You can see, yep, that's not going to be good for the bearings. However, I screwed up a little. You can see that the number here is a little watery, and the one over here, and that one is completely gone. However, I'm glad I did, because this is now on 41,998. And I allowed myself to spin up until 52,000, and then, holy, this is very stiff. So we're going to soak this entire thing in acetone. You know, the numbers are going to get lost, unfortunately, because they're really in pretty good shape, and I rather like the slightly tinted look on here. But it'll have to be done. This is just way too hard. You know, consider that all the strain that I'm putting on here with my big fingers will have to pass through this tiny gear and through the Speedo cable. So what's going on in here? Well, I took a look at the tripometer, and in this carrier wheel, the valleys between the teeth are partially clogged up. You can see one right there. The wheels are fixed on here with this disc, and the disc is held on with these stakings right here. So I'll carefully file them down, slide the wheels off, clean them all up, put them back on, and then rivet this into place again. I'm going to leave this disc on here, leave these guys just the way they are. I've got plenty of room to get in here and clean things up. You know, and saves me the effort of the whole deal. these green boogers were caught in between the teeth of the carryover wheels in here, probably oxidization from the brass. And I've been using a toothbrush and acetone to get rid of that. Pro tip, use your dad's toothbrush. It just will keep you from the hassle of having the bad taste in the morning. Now I'm going to take a syringe with thin oil and coat these brass bushings here with oil so they ride smoothly on the shaft. Not the teeth, however. That's what's going to cause dust and grime to get caught in between them. And this, fellas, is how it's supposed to click over.
Mein Mädel ist nur eine Verkäuferin in einem Schuhgeschäft mit 80 Franken Salär in der Woche, doch viel süßer wie jede Königin vom Film.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
Am Sonntag, wenn wir zum Tanzen gehen, zieht sie das Kleidchen an aus weißer Seide, das ich so liebe, denn sie fließt drin wie eine kleine Fürstin aus. Die Jazzband spielt dann gleich leise ihr Lieblingsstück. Sie schmiegt sich an so weich und legt den Kopf zurück. Mein Mädel ist nur eine Verkäuferin in einem Schuhgeschäft mit 80 Franken Salär in der Woche, doch sie gibt mir für viele Millionen Glück.
Alright, the numbers are on, finally. It took me about 1.5 gallons of glue to get these stuck on here, and you can see it ran over into the sides too, so I'm going to have to do a bit of cleanup. Word of caution when reassembling this on the side, don't just slide everything over and go, oh yeah, it's going to work. It won't, because if you look closely, these teeth on the gear are different length. And if you offset the mechanism by one tooth, then it's going to only advance the next number by half a click, and the next time the number comes around, it's going to completely lock up everything. We can also start reassembling the Speedo. I've soaked this thing in oil. I've filled this chamber here up with oil and had it sitting like this overnight. And now it's spinning even smoother than it did before. So now we can, hit the spots which are turning slowly with some light grease and fill the spindle bore up with some oil and start the reassembly.
Mein Mädel ist nur eine Verkäuferin in einem Schuhgeschäft mit 80 Franken Salär in der Woche, doch sie gibt mir für viele Millionen Glück.
Alright, here we are back in the lathe again with the Speedo cable hooked up. Now if you're a little intrigued that this Speedo goes up to 120, look closely. This Speedo measures in kilometers per hour, not freedoms per square eagle. And so I've updated my list here, and with the speed I've currently set it at, we're expecting 39 on the reading, or somewhere close. That's about 40. I'll take that. Okay, next speed, we're expecting 45. That's 46. I'm fine with that. Next one, we're expecting 28. That's 26. If you wonder why you're looking at this at an angle, well, the Speedo shaft for 30-31 is different to 27 to 29. The square is different. And I don't know why this contraption with the Speedo cable worked in the first place, but it didn't anymore, so I have to use a piece of rubber here in between as a coupling, and that works fine. I'm going to spin this a little further. The owner of this thing told me which kilometer setting he wants this at, and then it's ready to go back home. Okay, the Speedo survived the trial just fine. Didn't get warm, didn't make funny noises or anything. So I'm thinking this thing is ready for service again. This was probably faster than it will be ever driven in the car. So I'm rather happy with, how everything worked out. And yeah, ready for service. I hope you enjoyed this one. Hope I could help. And see you guys next time. Bye bye. This was probably the fastest it had ever been. This was probably the fastest it had. Bruder, es kann doch nicht so schwer sein. Sprich Englisch. Royal